Welcome to Craft School. We're going to start a brand new section today, and this is all about the SVG cut files and the projects that you can make by using them. Now, for those of you who do not know what an SVG cut file is, it's the format that we set up a design in if you want to cut it on your cutting machine. Now, I use the Cricut Explorer. That's my machine of choice. You might have a different machine, and most of them are set up so you can use SVG cut files. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to upload and use it on your machine, but I'm going to show you what you can do with the projects once you've cut them. For our basic class, I'm going to use this Greenery bouquet as the project that we're going to make, and I'll show you some tips and techniques that you can use in other places. If you do have a Cricut cutting machine and you want to learn a bit more about the software, I do have a class over at craftsy.com, and you can learn all about it there. When you look on our site, you'll see that we have 3 different kinds of paper flowers. We have our crepe paper flowers, which there's a lot of great videos for that. We have tissue paper flowers that we do as well. And then I have this beautiful frosted paper flower. And this is where I actually started designing paper flowers. So to me, it's near and dear to my heart. And the thing about the paper that you want to use when doing this type of flower is it's a lightweight paper. It's not a cardstock, and I use a frosted sheen on it so that it has that little extra gleam and it changes colors when it curls. This is really important to me. If you want to get the effect that I get when making paper flowers, you'll want to purchase this paper. I have links for all of it below for this particular project, and in every single flower that we do using this paper, we also have links below. And I get all of this from paperpapers.com. They have a great variety. For this project, I'm using a variety of greens. There is one color in here that's not a frosted metallic, but I think that's okay because it actually adds a little bit more texture into the visualization of this project. I'm also using this light green vellum, and again, it's all about variety. So now let me show you some of my tips and tricks so that you can get this beautiful 3D look with this paper. So I chose to make this Greenery wedding bouquet for several reasons. One is because greenery and plants are something that you can use in several different projects, either making a bouquet or making plants for your desktop. They just come in really handy, so it's a great place to start. And then secondly, greenery, it is the color of the year, and it's also a big trend right now in weddings to have these full greenery only but wedding bouquets without flowers. So I thought it'd be a really fun project to make. So for the materials and tools, I have all of my greenery pre-cut. So we have the SVG cut files for you, and it has all the instructions and numbers of how many pieces you need to cut for this particular bouquet. Now, if you want to cut it all out by hand, we also have the PDF template for you as well. The other materials you will need is a 6-inch foam ball that I've cut in half, and I just used a plastic foam cutting knife to do that. I have 2 dowels, a piece of green tissue paper that I'll cover the ball with. I have some 20 gauge wire and some pretty ribbon to wrap my stem. For tools, I have my scissors, my wire cutters with needle nose pliers, and then my hot glue gun. And this is a low temperature hot glue gun. To start this project, I'm going to show you how to make the base. And this is the foam ball. You can see how my sticks create a handle and how I've covered the foam ball completely with all of this greenery. So let's start with that. Now this is an option. You can just go ahead and use the foam ball as it is, but what I noted is that if I don't cover absolutely every surface of this ball, you can kind of see the foam through it. It's not so pretty. So I picked up some light green tissue paper and I fold it in half, so I have this whole large piece here, and I'm just going to simply wrap it. And once I come to a place, I might give it a little bit of hot glue. Now again, none of this will really show, it'll peek through, but none of it will show so much that you have to be perfect. And then I'm just going to fold it all the way around. Almost like a Christmas package. And then glue it on the back to secure it. And any of these little flaps that stick out, I'll go ahead and glue those down as well. You want it as flat as possible. Okay, now we're ready to add the sticks. And these are skewers that have one end that's pointed and one end that's flat. And I'm going to use my pointed end. And you'll want to think about this on how you would hold the bouquet itself. So you want the face of the bouquet to be the round. And then I'm going to slide the sticks in at an angle. And I'm going to put them pretty much in the center. I'm going to poke through the tissue paper and slide it up just enough so that it feels secure. And then I can see exactly how, if I'm holding the bouquet, it has a really nice face to the surface. Now I will go in and add a little bit of glue because we don't want this to slide out. So just secure the back of my sticks. And once the bouquet is complete, I'll use the ribbon to cover the sticks so that you won't see the sticks themselves. So my method when I'm designing a bouquet with all these different size pieces is I'll usually start with the largest and then go to the most delicate and detailed. There is one side note on this. I'm also using these two pieces, which this is kind of a succulent shape. I'm using these to fill up space and cover my foam ball. So it'll be a combination of these and then the largest, flattest leaves that we'll start with. So let me pull these out. We have the very long ones. We have these here that have the more textured edge. And then we have these very large flat lemon leaves and then the smaller lemon leaves. So that's where I'm going to start, and then I'll add in these pieces. So when I cut my SVG file, I usually have a score tool in there, and that will add these little places where you can bend the leaf. Now, if you're using a machine that doesn't have the score tool option, you can go ahead and score them by hand, or you can just fold them, whichever you'd like. I think that one of my key techniques when I'm working with this flat frosted paper is that by the time I'm done, it's not going to be flat anymore. So there's several ways you can do that. You want to fold, and then you'll also want to use the side of your scissors to add a little bit of curl to your leaf or to your petal. And this is actually kind of fun. When you have something really big like this, where maybe your scissor can't hit the whole edge, you can go to the side of the table and just run it down the side like that. So you might want to spend some time just folding and curling all of your leaves. You can do this in front of the TV. You can do this while having a cup of tea with a friend. It is really quite fun. On these 3 leaves, you can see this beautiful score pattern that we created by using our score tool. But to prepare them, we use the same technique as we did on our larger leaf. Just fold it in half. And then in this case, I'll use the edge of my scissors. I'm using them closed. Once I open them up, just give this a little bit of a curl. And then that way, my leaf is shaped like this. I have these 3 sets of leaves curled and ready to go, and now I'll show you what to do with the succulents. So I have a stack of the lighter green and then the darker green, and this is where a lot of curling comes in. I'm going to curl down, up, and then turn it down and up. I'll do that the same on the small green. Then I'll put a little dab of glue in the center of the lighter, larger green and place the smaller one at the cross section so it's almost an X. You can see how I did that there. And I'll go ahead and do this to all my stack. The reason why this works really well for this bouquet is because this takes a lot of space and surface, so it's a great leaf to fill in those spots. And yet you still have a lot of 3D depth and dimension rather than just laying a flat leaf on the surface itself. One of my tips that I would say when doing any kind of bouquet, but especially this greenery bouquet, is that you'll want to think of combining different sizes of leaves and different colors. You'll want to have these very lightweight, delicate pieces as well as larger, flatter pieces, because this is what will give you, that variety that you want so that it has a little bit of a realistic feel to it when you're done. The last leaf that I'm going to prepare before I put them on the bouquet are these vellum leaves, and this is kind of a seeded eucalyptus leaf, but the only thing I really need to do here is just fold them in half. I don't want to run any scissors that actually will make a mark on them. So this will do the trick. You just fold them in half and then peel them back. Now these other leaves that I have over here, we have ferns and some kind of olive branches, and here's the seeds for the eucalyptus. I don't need to do any curling or preparing on those because they're so delicate that when you put them in the bouquet, the way that they hang, they'll twist and turn a bit so that you get enough dimension just by that alone. To assemble the bouquet and put all the leaves onto the form, I actually started in the back and then worked my way forward. So I'll just tell you my rhythm here. So I started in the back and tried to get everything covered on the back. Then I moved to the front and I started placing in my largest leaves. Now, as you can see, the bouquet isn't completely balanced because I like more of a free form off balance design. Now, this is totally up to you. You can be creative and just make it aesthetically pleasing for yourself, but this is kind of how I do it. I'll use a combination of these really big leaves because that covers a lot. I'll put quite a bit of glue. Now I don't want to just cover it with all big leaves because that's not very interesting. So I'll mix it up. Maybe use one of these. And I'm doing it in somewhat of a spray formation. And for this side of the bouquet, you can see I actually put the face towards the back, but you can also flip it the other direction because when you pick it up, you can see the front of the leaf on this side. So I like to mix it up a little bit. Maybe put 2 here. I'm even going to use a little bit of this right at the base of the sticks, and that gives it a really nice finished look. And the thing that I love about using this low temperature hot glue gun is that I can put glue on it and I can actually hold it in place without burning myself. That's kind of important. Now I'll use some smaller leaves to tuck in between. Here's a couple of extra of these succulents, and I'm just going to fold them in half and then tuck them behind the larger leaf. So the back side looks pretty good, and I will start on the front. Now I have a little bit of a different technique for the front. Since I'm gluing everything very flat onto the back and I want it to stay flat, I could just glue the leaves directly onto the foam ball. But for the front, I'm going to use a wiring technique. And I'll start with these large leaves first. I'm going to cut a wire probably about 5-6 inches long, and I'll bend it into somewhat of a pen shape. Then I'll loop my leaf around that. And you have to remember that paper doesn't necessarily glue as well to wire. Wire doesn't hold glue, so I like to glue paper to paper. So I've made myself somewhat of a floral pin. Then I'm going to place it right into the foam, and I'm going to place downward first. So if you go this direction, it might easily fall out. So you want to place it downward so that it holds and it doesn't easily fall out. And then you also have a bit of a movement too, because you want it to move around and look more natural. If it's glued flat on, it might be a little bit more stiff. If you find yourself putting a pin right towards the bottom of the foam and you know it's going to pop through, here's a technique. I wouldn't use it for all of them. Go ahead and stick it upwards, but then add some glue right in the back, and that will help keep it in place. So when I'm doing bridal bouquets, especially with real flowers, oftentimes I'll stand in front of the mirror and I will work back and forth, and that way I can see exactly what I'm doing and how it might look to the person who actually sees the bridal bouquet as it walks down the aisle. So that's another fun technique that you can use. As my bouquet gets longer, another thing I like to do is bring in a tall vase and just place it inside, and that helps me keep it in place while I'm working on it. I've used up the long leaves, so now I'm going to go ahead and finish with these really large lemon leaves. I only have a couple of them, so I want to think about the perfect placement of this leaf. So here's a different technique. Rather than, since I don't have a stem to wrap it around and I'm not having these hanging, they're actually going to be more vertical. I'll go ahead and clip a wire. This is about 3 inches long. And then I'm going to bring in some of my scraps, and this is left over from my cutting machine, and just trim myself some little ovals. Put a line of glue on the back, place my wire, and then put this little piece of paper over the top. This will really help secure the wire between the paper, and it won't be popping off. And that way I can put the leaf in more of a vertical direction. And once it's in, I can also bend it down a little bit. Now I don't want to put one exactly on the other side because that might look a little bit too Mickey Mouse maybe. Some ears. I'll put them on the same side so it looks something like this, and then I'll use something large on the other side to balance it out. Then I'm going to start adding in these leaves, which are the next to the largest. And I'll show you another technique that I use. Again, I'm going to clip my wire about 5 inches long and place a line of glue right on the back spine, and then take another leaf and put it at an angle so that it looks something like this. And again, the wire is sandwiched between the two leaves. Another thing I might do while it's still cooling is pinch these leaves so that they have a bit more dimension, and just hold them for a second while it's cooling so that they look like this when I put them into the bouquet. Because the more dimension I have, the fuller the bouquet will look, and it makes it a lot easier to get the big look that I'm wanting. So I have these large leaves on one side, now I'm going to work on the other side. And I'll do a few of these double leaf patterns, and then I'll add in some singles of the same leaf. So on this leaf, I want it to actually come back downwards. The way I would do that is just make a hook out of my wire. I'm going to cut that wire a little bit shorter. So I'll hook it in and then slide it in to the foam. And now we're getting a different direction and a different motion. The nice thing about working with foam and wire like this is if you don't quite like the place that you put it, you can always pull it out and move it around. So it gives you a bit more room to actually play and experiment so that you get exactly the right bouquet. Now, all the time that I'm working on my bouquet, I keep turning it around and looking to make sure it has the shape that I'm looking for. And at first you have to think of these bigger leaves as more of the framework, and then you'll be filling it up with the smaller leaves in between. So this is my third set of leaves, and now I'm going to mix it up, and I'll use these small lemon leaves as well as these little succulents to fill it in before I start adding all the detail. So the succulents, I have these kind of formed into this almost a flower-like shape. So again, I'll use this method of making a pen out of some wire, and I'll fold that in half. I'm going to slide that kind of around the leaves here. Now, when I actually get the wire on, I think the way that I like it to lay is I want to pinch it together anyway, sort of fold it together so that everything kind of comes forward. You can add some glue onto the back of that before you stick it in, or if you want to make sure that you can move things around first, you may just want to use the wire. And you can see how this is going to start making a lot of fill in these blank areas. So I have most of the bouquet built out, at least the structure, before I start putting in all my detail. And with all of these little extra pieces, I'm going to turn the bouquet over and look from the different angles behind and on the side and fill in all of these blank spots so that no matter which direction someone sees the bouquet, it looks absolutely beautiful and full. I have all the tissue paper covered up. So now I'm going to start adding in all my other pieces, and I think what I'll do is start with this one because it's very drapey, and I'll want to position them as if they would naturally be draping out of this bouquet. So I'm probably going to do a few down at the bottom, maybe a couple coming out of the side, maybe not down the center because that might be a little awkward. And then I'll add in these two pieces. And then I'll add these last 3 at the very end, because that's where the color kind of changes, and that's sort of the focal point. Even though this bouquet is very, it doesn't have a focal point so much, it's just more of an arrangement. I think that these green ferns are the things that make this bouquet pop. So for these pieces, it's actually quite simple. I just have a piece of wire here, and I'm going to run just a small bead of glue right down the stem. It's a very, very tiny stem. And that's pretty much it. Since there's not a whole lot to hang on to anyway, it's probably not going to fall off. And then I'm going to slide it right up into the foam and add a little bit of glue at the end so that it stays in place. Add some glue down there to keep the wire in place. And look how pretty that hangs. And you can see how it being so delicate, it has a really nice sway to it, and there's really no need to curl it. Let's add some more. This one I'm going to bend because I'm putting it onto the side. And then I'll tuck it back between all of these little wires. You can see how that falls. And again, I'm not going to put all of these around the bottom. I'm going to put some more on one side than the other, and then balance it out with the other long stringy one, but it's a different color, so that way it doesn't look so even Steven. Now, since these have a little bit more leaf to grab onto, I'm going to go ahead and make a pin for this, where I'll go ahead and glue a couple of those leaves, place the wire, and then fold it over. I think this will give it a little bit more strength. In with the wire, I'm going to place it in at a hook so that it goes downwards and it won't easily slide out. See that there? And since I only have 2 of these, I'm going to put them side by side. The second one I layered up on top of a few leaves so that it has a little bit of dimension between the 2 and they're not laying right on top of each other. Okay, now I think I'm going to add in these really pretty little vellum pieces. This is going to break the color up just a little bit because it's almost a teal color, but then it's sheer, so it doesn't have so much of a color change to it. And when I decide where to put everything, I'll look at the whole design of the piece and kind of decide where it needs some space broken up, where it might have maybe several leaves of one color and I want to break that up a little bit, or there's a space over here where I need to fill. So you just kind of look at it that way. This is where you can get really creative. It's a lot of fun. On these leaves, I think it works really well to do the 2 leaf one right on top of each other. And in this case, I actually folded them the opposite direction, and then I'll make a hook and place it into my bouquet. So I think I'm going to stop with these leaves. I might add a few more later, we'll see. You'll notice that I've actually placed them so that they go down, they hang rather than pop up. You know, you could add some popping up if you want to, but just remember that will change a little bit of your dimension, and I don't know how much of the draping you prefer over more of, you know, a vertical bouquet. So then the next thing are these ferns. And again, this is sort of my finishing touch. The ferns and then these little tiny seed pods are the finishing touch to this bouquet. So it's really important that you place them carefully. In this case, because I am going to put them vertical in the bouquet and then let them drape down, in some cases, I'll simply just glue the wire right to the stem. I'll want a few inches past so that I have something to slide into the foam. I'll start with the larger ones. There's 2 different sizes. Just add a line of glue. Place the wire. And then I'm going to bend it a bit so that it gives me this really nice drape. And then place it into the foam. And you can see how beautiful that looks. If you want to control a little bit more of the curve on the fern, you can go ahead and place a longer wire. This is how we made our fern plants, is we actually put a piece of wire almost the whole length of the fern itself, because then you can really control how much the fern bends. Give myself enough to put in to the foam, and then just gently bend that. And this really starts looking like the bouquet is being finished now. I finished adding all of the leaves, including those extra vellum pieces, which I tucked behind in little areas. You know, when you turn the bouquet, you can see places that needs extra leaves. So the last touch are these little teeny seeds that are eucalyptus seeds. And you can see how I just lightly placed them throughout the bouquet. Now, you can go ahead and wire them like I did before, or a nice little trick that I use is I'll actually just glue them right into the leaves. So I place some glue right on the stem. I figure out my position and I tuck it right behind a leaf and just stick it right on there. And because it's so delicate and there's so much going on, you can't really tell that it's stuck to the leaf, but it works and it makes it a lot easier because these are so delicate. So I'm gonna finish up with that. So here you can see the bouquet finished. And the last thing I want to do is just add this ribbon onto the back to cover up these little sticks, and it will make it a lot more secure. I have this beautiful silk ribbon that I like to use. You can use any ribbon you want to. Just consider that the stiffer it is, the more bumps you'll have. Something that's this soft actually will stretch in different ways, so you get a really nice soft bouquet. So the way that I'm going to start this ribbon wrap is I have about a foot of ribbon, and I'll place it at the very top. I'll simply wrap it down the stem. And when I get down to the end, I'll want to straighten it out so that I have a nice even wrap on the bottom. And then I'll just start going back up again. And when I go up, I'm actually going to make the ribbon wrap tighter. And you can see how nice and soft this is, and it lays really flat. So when I get back up to the top, you can know how much to trim, but you'll make it even. And then tie that into a knot, and then you can tie a double knot or go ahead and tie a bow. And this gives you a beautiful finish. I want to trim my ribbons even at the end, maybe at an angle, or you can do a double point if you want to. So here you have two different bouquets. They look similar, they look a little different, but you can see how you can get really creative and use these materials and techniques to make almost anything you want to, whether it be a bridal bouquet or something for the center of your table. So this project uses one of my favorite craft materials, which you can find on paperpapers.com, and this is the beginning of a new series where I'm going to show you not only how to use this beautiful paper, but also how to use SVG cut files and your cutting machine. So make sure and subscribe by clicking the button below so you can catch all of our new videos.